Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. The title is A Strange Grace Dwells Behind the Eyes. And so I would like to speak about honesty and vision. Usually we see honesty in regards to action and in regards to communication. But honesty in regards to vision is a suggestion that there are certain things you just see. And it's kind of like behind your eyes, there is the subjective realm. In front of your eyes, there's the objective realm. What that means is when the human being looks in front of their eyes, things appear as objects. But when you wonder about who you are behind your eyes, you appear as a subject at most, or that sense of being a subject behind your eyes can also turn into this whole momentary process. So we can say there is this route to evolution where the person in their sincerity, they just look at how their vision is occurring before they envision. You kind of are trying to get a sense of the mind of the world before you can discriminate between your own mind in comparison to it. Now, what do I mean by mind of the world? You see, there's physical movements occurring, and I also consider that there's non-physical movements occurring on the surface of this earth. I don't feel it's just people walking in the street. Language is walking in people's minds. And we are a species that is oriented through stories and through various ways that the inner realms of people, the stories of people infuse, as there's a future towards a collective integrative intent. For me, human psychology is really a game of how we define the human being. I feel every psychologist, their inspiration is literally as if they go to the dictionary of the world, open it, and they're like, what does psyche mean? What does psychology mean? Only to discover that it's an uncharted territory where the mind has an evocational relationship with phenomena. What does that mean? That means these words, they are kind of being said out of nowhere from the silence. Suddenly the word enters, but how the word is being said, it's abiding by an inner rhythm. What does that mean? That means dimensions are codependent. We think that we're only in one kind of dimension and there's other dimensions. Let me tell you, no, the dimensions are alive and they interact with one another. And what may appear as a phenomena of self is actually an oscillation between two different worlds. So right now, we as human beings think that the self is what's in the world or what is separated from the world. There will be a time through a more multidimensional lens where the human being will feel that all that is visible, all that is occurring and oscillating between the known and the unknown. That means check it out. You know, I could stay up and just kind of like see the light of the sun from the moment it enters the world and the moment where it becomes night. Or I can, in some sense, choose to sleep in the day, or I can choose to stay awake in the night and see dawn again. I'm just telling you, there is, after some point, what there is in front of you diminishes, and I thought this was due to karma, person being lucky or unlucky, and then later on I realized that's all the shenanigans. What it really is the person is moving between the known and the unknown. So this was Mr. Within's vision of the evolution of advancement of civilization towards civilization 2.0, which is the idea of a yin-yang civilization. What does that mean? There is no good people. There is no bad people. Even though there can be people who are inclined towards those archetypal values. But I'm telling you, it's like they're in a yin-yang civilization. Those are two dimensions. If you walk towards them, you are good, you are bad. So it's like we're taking away the defining of the whole person's character and just looking at the action. That the action the human being does gives it an image. So every human being should think about, especially in society, when you do an action, it's also being translated as an image in other people's minds. I'll give you an example. Throughout the years since 2014, I've been giving these talks. Often, a lot of these talks have been born in nature. Like, I've been around nature. And there was this time where I was in Edwards Garden giving a talk, and I remember a group of people just walking by and seeing me holding my phone and just talking to my phone. You know? And I remember just seeing this group of people smile when they saw me. This random guy just talking on his like recording, like giving a lecture to his phone. And there's been times where I have also been in the way of the moment. This strange grace that dwells behind the eyes is not a conceptual relationship. It opens through the emotional until the presence is witnessed. And the presence is witnessed when you realize your presence is the witness. That means on some energetic level, you're always aware of what is happening, but on a conceptual, conscious level, you're not. When a person tries to, as Carl Jung said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So, unless you make the unconscious conscious, you in some sense are limited in the knowledge you have. When Albert Einstein says you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness, this man solved a problem which he in some sense wrote in two of his essays, General Relativity and Super Relativity. And so Einstein was in a post office and he was smart because he's like, where can I get access to a table? And so he was in the post office, and just like how Carl Jung says, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and call it fate. Einstein was like, in some sense, the unconscious. He had caught a hold of the unconscious. He was wondering about a new way where something was happening. That means Einstein in that post office found a moment where he was asking a question as if he was among the first people to ask the question again. Do you know? And so he had a thought experiment where in his thought experiment, in his subtler realms, he moved at the speed of light. And then suddenly he theorized something out of it. Of course, there's way more detail to what he saw. But I'm just saying that it was an imaginary leap towards a greater understanding of reality. That's what Einstein's thought experiment was. He had to engage the whole concept and context differently to see something new. And it's kind of like this, where every day we're in the same moment and you arise as a concept with the context, you arise as a self in a world. And so it's all about what you do as a self in this world and what the world does to you. There's been certain days where I felt the world soul was angry at me, you know? And I'm to being playful, of course, but what I mean by that is that I just felt I was either resisting something about the day or something in the day was resisting me. I have experienced a couple instant shutdowns in this life. What I mean by that is I've literally seen the moment, attempted something in the moment, and my efforts were instantly shut down, either by others or by my own uh, mindset or whatever, you know? And when that shutdown has been there, most people fear meaninglessness. Most people who are in society, they want to have a meaning, so they go on this dance of their own ideologies. But I'm telling you, we as human beings will realize that the unknown is normal. The known is unique. The known is the divine. That means, doesn't it seem like a miracle when the medical sciences improve, increase? It's like, wow. You know, for me, I'm like nurses and doctors are like, you know, the closest thing we have to angels on this earth. Of course, after, you know, mothers and sisters, I would say. There is a bliss behind the eyes. I remember going to Rishikesh, and I don't share this often, but I got initiated by this man named Mahatma Vijay. It was a very synchronistic moment. And he told me that whenever you see people say Jai Satchit Ananda, and it was in some sense a way of saying that Jai Satchit Ananda means that you are aware that conscious existence is bliss. So it is the union of you can say, the next paradigm where we are not finding conceptually things in common, we are finding rhythmically and in our vision things in common. So you as a human being require an ability not to in some sense be able to put your hand on your own heart, but be able to in some sense, with your inner realms, put your hand on the hearts of others and realize they are all living beings. Everybody is fighting a battle you can't see. So technically, it's like the ultimate peace we're looking for is not just an external peace, but it is also the peace of mind where all the inner battles are sufficed. Now the issue is that possible? So many people have thought about a utopia. George Orwell spoke about a dystopia, you know? Some writers in history, some people have asked them, why do you write these stories, man? And the writer's been like, so that not that people go to where the story is, people see the outcome. When you see the potential of something, then it changes your mind, really. In one verse, we created the universe as a symbol for ourselves. And I feel there is no greater technology for now accessible to human beings, regardless of all the technological innovation, than language. I feel people don't realize language is an advanced technology. You can use it. You have to discover your own mind strength with the weapon. Or I say that the mind is like a sword and shield. What does that mean? That means your mind is here to, in some sense, certain moments for you to be offensive, not rude, but be on the offense. Okay, so expression, communication is literally entrance. So whenever I speak, it doesn't feel to me like I'm giving a talk. It feels like I'm entering my inner realms when I give these talks, and I just keep looking through and going through. Do you see? There's a certain geometrical permission that opens up. Some human beings on this planet, their inner realms will be geometrical, and if you're a person who you're randomly drawing geometrical shapes, or you're like, conscious of your inner realms, then I can tell you, you have picked up a signal that is going to happen in 100 years. So hopefully I can make it quicker. But I feel there will eventually a geometrical, all language will have an ultimate geometrical translation. That one language we're all wondering how to experience, it must be a geometrical language. We are able and sophisticated enough to create a geometrical language. I even tried it, guys. I was sitting in a moment and in a room, I was like in a room, and there were other people there, and I was like playfully for myself on a piece of paper, I'm like, let me see, how would I document this whole moment geometrically? And I wrote a geometrical kind of shape, and when I looked at that geometrical shape, I had a sense that I could know what was happening in that room. So it's not complex. We've managed to connect letters to images. We can definitely connect geometrical shapes to images. It's not an issue. Hopefully in this lifetime I'll be able to leave behind my prototype of a geometric language, but it's complex. There's so many things I want to do in this life, but it's as if you're like, it's like you want to be in the driver's seat and the passenger seat and also the other two seats in the back. You want to be in all four seats in life, and you can totally see, you can navigate through those four seats, but you see whatever you do, you're in the driver's seat. You are experientially the driver of your moment. Unless you realize this, you don't understand the value of 4 billion years of evolution. That we're not here just to find truth. We are here to be a process, a chess piece in this grand cosmic game. So the thing is that people, they feel lonely because they feel that it's just them. Let me tell you, you are not just you. You're simultaneously being inseparable from how everything is happening. So really, I did not, after some point, I personally don't have too much of an ideological relationship. I mean, when I speak, I feel like I'm entering an Iron Man suit. But like, but when I don't speak, when I'm in utter silence, there is this contentment with energy just being conscious of itself. Satchidananda means conscious existence is bliss. What does that mean? That means when you, as a human being, realize that you're conscious experientially and you exist simultaneously, you will realize the uniqueness of these two is just a bliss. So anytime technically you become conscious of existence, that's when that beauty comes. That's when that person, when they became conscious of the sunset, they were like, it's beautiful. You know, it was beautiful because they became conscious of how something was moving. Our minds are way more advanced than we're buying into, you know. So interesting. Chat sections up. Welcome everybody. It's all about human effort. It's all about wondering, I feel, after some point, if you forgot about every person's belief, language, idea, name, you stripped away all the stories, symbols, classifications, concepts, you would just be left with a grand happening. That means we are happening as the world simultaneously as we are happening to ourselves as a person. This distinction is so crucial. This distinction is so crucial because then you will not resist nature. There's no such thing, I'll be honest, like there in my youth I did feel there was a karmic quarantine. I felt as if like the universe was making its own chess moves and I was just like a chess piece. But then there came this recognition that of course there is a temporary conditional existence, but what about the unconditional? What is the value of the unconditional? And that's when I notice our civilization is escaping the unknown. We are afraid of it. Do you know that's the greatest clue? That was the greatest clue I got. I'm like, what is something every human being is afraid? Doesn't matter if you're the strongest, if you're the weakest, something every human being is afraid of. And I realized what they're afraid of is change without comprehending the change. That means this life is so intense that just take a look at it, guys. Your physical body is an elemental formation. So technically, we're all obsessed about information, but we are in formation as a phenomenon. So when this formation changes, eventually there's an entrance into unknown. I'm saying everything is changing in this world except change, so the awareness to change seems to be the mystical gate out of the chaos of a changing world. Okay, sorry guys, had to take intermission there. Something was happening. All right, a strange grace dwells behind the eyes. Let's continue. Wait a minute. In the chat section, Jamie says, if our senses detect change, then something in us must be changing. Uh, yeah, yeah, the unchanging. Yeah, that means it's like, what is observing change? That was a question I had, Jamie, when I was in 2011 when I was sitting on a rock in the middle of a river, and it was just for a second I was like, who is answering right now all the questions that my mind is projecting? And it seemed like the questioner and the answer seemed to be endlessly expressions generated. So I became curious about what in my moment and intelligence is something that if I don't do anything, it's there. I became to look, I started looking for a truth before I existed and before I had moved it, towards it, you know? This is why I've sometimes said it's like you're free before you need to be, before you have to be, before you should fight for eons to be. It's all an effort of the energy that's just here on some level. On some level, you're like, yo, is that a human being that made a mistake? No, that's just some energy that expressed in that manner, you know? For me, I have experienced certain, I playfully sometimes call them oceanic moments. The poet Rumi says, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're the entire ocean in the drop. And Kabir says, you know, many know that the drop merges into the ocean, but few know that the ocean also merges into the drop. And what does that mean? That means your potential is your double life. It is the life that is generating in the life that you're living. You know, think about it this way. From a scientific way, energy can't be created or destroyed. It changes from potential to kinetic. So it's like you're doing a kinetic activity, which is like surviving in this world, but you're also noticing the potential. So what does that mean? That means any pattern of living opens one to greater patterns. So the issue is about, it's kind of like the person can get on any flight in the airport, but they're constantly changing flights. They're changing where they want to go. But if you know where you want to go, then the options, the parallel options to that decision leave. So sometimes when you make a decision, you are making a declaration of your moment. Honesty and vision sometimes mean you don't have to resist something that you already know. Like, can you imagine like being like a person in Pompeii where the volcano erupted while it was raining and people turned into stone? Can you imagine being a person who's like everybody's running away from the lava, this guy's running towards the lava, and then the person's like, "Yo, man, what are you doing? Why are you running towards the lava?" And the guy's like, "I don't believe that's lava unless I see it for myself." By the time the guy goes to see the lava, he has become a statue for our myths. So in some sense, it's a statue for our legends. So that's the thing. That sometimes it's not even about seeing what that is. Things have their nature. When I look at my phone, it has a certain constitution. When I look at my this cup of coffee in front of me, it has its own constitution. Everything in life has a sort of orchestration, a sort of design. But the human being is a creature that it is not only conscious of its design, it can regenerate, realign, and redirect. So the fact that we have hands, it's a gift of the cosmos. The fact that we have legs, it's a gift of the cosmos. The fact that we can move on the earth and be an individual, it's a gift from the cosmos. It's like they asked the cosmos, why did you create the human being? And the cosmos was like, I wanted to see how far my eyes could go. There are some days where I just kind of like, how can I tell you? In this life, I've had existential panic attacks, but I've also had existential celebrations, moments where for no reason, just the awareness that awareness is here, self is here. There's something here to move. That sometimes can just be an incredible energy source on itself. There's this quote by Rumi. He says, wear gratitude like a cloak and it will feed every corner of your life. What does that mean? And even in the Sufi Dervish tradition, they're like, the Sufi is one who is not, Shams Tabrizi, I believe, was saying this. He says the Sufi isn't one who, when things are given, you're grateful, but when things are taken away, you're grateful too. And it's this idea that the unchanging is the gratefulness. That means compassion, love, gratefulness, all these qualities where we consider to be those of the superior human being. These qualities are superior because they are qualities that literally the creature has to be more aware than itself. Do you see? That means if you were on an island, whatever you love is self-love. You know what I mean? So that guy in Castaway, he loved Wilson. He loved that volleyball head, which had become his kind of backup system for his sanity, you know, in the movie Castaway. So when the volleyball went away, on some level, it was a detachment from self-love and then being able to return back to where there are greater stages to perform on. There are some people who they get shy to go on stage, and there's some people who can't wait to get on stage. They're just waiting for the stage, you know? I feel that the way I've experienced this sort of grace behind my eyes is that I've noticed that grace is not looking for shapes. That there is a hidden storyline that will be forbidden to the dualistic mind as long as it projects. And it is the story of the life beyond this story. It is how there has been a dimension to your existence, where existence, it doesn't matter what thought you have on it, it doesn't matter what symbol you give it, it is just existing. It is the endurance of manifestation in this plane of existence. That means there are some people who they feel they are their body. There are some people who, in some sense, they can see how the body is an elemental constitution. They realize their humanhood is a conditional free will. That means we don't have unconditional free will. That means if aliens come on this planet and they are superior, much more superior than us, then it's as if all our languages and knowledge have suddenly fallen in the shadow of a superior one. For me, it has been a moment of preferencelessness, and I don't know how to tell you. It is not boredom. Boredom, the person still has a preference for excitement. This is a sort of preferencelessness where the person looks at this cosmos and he's like, whoa, do you know how many combinations of ways of looking at this picture I have? Just look at one moment. Just literally concentrate on a single object and ask yourself how many ways your mind has an ability to animate that object. And you will suddenly recognize the unconditional infinite authorization behind your eyes. That in some sense I am sitting in this room, but I can imagine like playfully behind my back, like lightsaber, like wings. Do you know what I mean? Like the mind is like, you know what it is? The mind is like the younger brother of the body. And so the body has the most immediate opinion on the experience, but the mind is like also gives its opinion too. There has been times where I remember saying it in one talk where my mind became my enemy. I've experienced a moment where my mind also became God. And when it became God, it was very similar to a moment of zero resistance against any idea. So it was such an opinionless state where it's like literally if you don't move and something else moves, you kind of feel that there is something beyond the boundary of your free will, which is sensory based, sensory perception based. So I'm telling you, it's not about just realizing we have free will. It's kind of about living life and seeing what it reveals. It's this kind of micro focus. I'm pretty much realizing we're like cameras. We can zoom in to not just objects, but also upon subjects, or we can zoom out of subjects. Because really, the display of speech is an oscillation between dimensions. That means any person writing a story, this is Mr. Within's kind of multidimensionality theory in regards to writing. So I've kind of had experience with writing, and I'm going to share with people that when you come to design a world, you create a character and you create a world. Okay? Now, this character's decisions reveal to the audience what world the character is in, right? And so it's the choice of how much you want the world to, at first in the story, be a friend of your character or not be a friend of your character. Most people want to see some person go through hardship and then overcome it and yay, you know, heroism. But some people don't want to see that. We just build the right system from the beginning. That means it's like you got to communicate to your world for its dimensions to open. Therefore, it means that in this life, you have to observe before action, and then as you act, also notice the observance is continuous through it. I have found myself in moments where my inner realms have moved my outer realms before ideology and identity. There has been certain moments of emergency in my life where I had to instantly just go into the witness. And when I go into the witness, it's how can I tell you? I mean, right now our bodies are known and the mind is unknown and we don't know about anything else, so we call it abstraction or woo-woo. But let me tell you, the only reason we should say woo-woo is if our last name was woo. I'm saying that really it's the unknown. Everything in the cosmos was woo-woo. It was only man's continuation through what he saw. It was a sort of, I call it experience tunneling. I wrote it in one of my books called The Mentor Sphere, where the human being recognizes that this life is not just a character in a story. All right, go do activity A, activity B, activity C, activity D. No, you are way more multidimensional than that, and your birthright is being taken away from you because of your own attention to a world that is not your nature. Let me tell you, there's certain moments, and it's like a blessing in disguise, but the person will not realize it. There are some failures that are kind of saying you tried this, but keep going on to other activities. But there are some failures that are like, okay, is that all you tried in this dimension? So there's certain things the person has to build. For me, there came this authorization, this recognition that novelty is freedom. It was as if like the universe in my inner realms was telling me, oh human being, you're alive now, how much are you going to vow towards the new? And I realized the new is the only ability to include the future. That means more than we should think about how we should live now, we should think about we should think ahead. I'm saying like those people who are in the here and now, just living in the here and now, true. Like that has a value. Being in the here and now, you're being an authentic citizen of the cosmopolites. But at the same time, there is a call of action, and only those who hear the cries of the better potential of the world, they will be chosen. That means I am a person who I feel the world is animate. I feel we're not all inside just a vast empty room of manifestation. I feel we are inside the mind of dimensions that are unfathomable to the dualistic. And there has been certain seekers who've literally their astronaut suit into the unknown was emptiness, and there has been some people who their astronaut suit to the unknown was in some sense geometric infinite speed. So there's different ways. I'm personally sharing the idea of the advanced communicator. I don't think people need to go meditate in caves anymore. I feel that if you're a person living in nature, kiss a tree and then run towards your species because it now requires to advance. You know, human beings have committed themselves. Our ancestors committed it. It's as if like your ancestors, all our ancestors before we were born were sculpting the statue, but they had to punch out. They couldn't exist anymore. And then we came into existence. And should we just forget that this grand sculpture of civilization, you will run towards it, you know? You will try to see the mind of your civilization before your eyes close. And that is that. That is the only feeling. The feeling of seeing the engines of an advanced civilization lighting up, running towards a better vision. I mean, really, what else can you do? In all of life, every moment of my life I've experienced, literally, I've been in a moment of action, okay? And in that moment, I was either choosing based on an inner realm context or outer realm. When I think about the outer realm, instantly, it's as if because you're looking at the other before the self, you are automatically like you're not looking at yourself. You know, so it's kind of like the difference between someone helping someone because how they wanted to make them feel and someone actually helping someone, you know? There's this story of this weird job interview where this guy goes into this job interview and he's a bit of a MacGyver kind of fellow, like he's a craftsman and whatnot, and he goes to this job interview and he's dressed in a suit. He sees the job interview is in some house. It's weird. It's like a job interview for a good company, but it's in this house. And the person comes and sees the doorbell of the house is broken, right? And before this guy came for the job interview, so many people had come in the job interview, and he saw one of them even going to the back. So when this guy, sorry, he doesn't see one of them going to the back. Anyways, he comes to the job interview, he rings the doorbell falls from its place. This guy's like, all right, let's just fix this doorbell. Doorbells are meant to be fixed. Let's just fix it. So he fixes the doorbell, right? As he's walking, he sees this part of the sign on the thing is broken. He fixes the sign. Then he notices there's this other thing broken. As he's going towards the back of the house to the job interview, he's fixing all these things, right? For no reason. He's just doing it because he feels it should be fixed. Sometimes you do the work not because of a human ideology, you just do it for how good the work can be done. You know, it's like you just write a sentence for the art of writing. Now, it doesn't matter who reads that sentence. You're like having an authentic relationship with the spirit of the skill and the craft. The attention evolves through its own expression. You learn way more from what you do in this life than what is done to you. And that's the privilege of consciousness. That means who said in this cosmos we are not multidimensional beings? I feel it's pretty much a coin flip, is it not? Anything we don't know, it's like 50-50. We know something, we don't know something. You know? So life is the strange thing where I feel when you realize nobody knows over the big picture, then you feel this strange explorer's vision of being like, wait a minute, you telling me this is how far the species has seen? You're telling me this is how far the species has come? That the species is concluding free will is an illusion. The moment you consider free will is an illusion, that's the ultimate reason for chaos. All those evil people are like, you tell me it's an illusion, so let's have fun in the illusion, and destruction roars. But I'm telling you, there's another way. There's another way of recognizing If there is an ability to make the inefficient decision, technically that means there's an ability to do the efficient decision. So anytime you feel you're in a moment that is efficient, just think about the reverse of the pattern. Do you know what that means? That means it's like someone who's like, they're sitting still and then let's say they're in a bad mood. So do the opposite. Literally go run and see what happens to your mood. Sometimes we can pilot between different polarities of how we're allowing meaning to be an interpretation of the moment. I am telling you, we're creatures of attention before we're creatures of thought. What is thought? Before the word existed, were we thoughts? You see what I'm saying? And a thought is an image. Because if it's not an image, what was the thought? You see, so thoughts are images. So behind our eyes, we relate to images as thoughts, but it's outdated. Thinking you're a thought is like archaic. It is archaic. It's literally medieval. Okay, if we want to be medieval people, sure, thinkers. But if we want to be modern human beings, we are not thinkers. We are witnesses of the objective or of the objective realm and the subjective realm. We are an incredible attention to what is occurring in front of our eyes and what is occurring behind our eyes. And if you don't trust that ability, it doesn't happen. That means if I think my hand can't hold this cup, I'm not going to hold it. But, when I drink it, that's when I know. That's when I know the strength of my own arm. That man has to participate in this life and has to understand some moments of it you're in the driver's seat, some moments you're in the passenger seat. Some moments you're observing how objects and subjects are moving, some moments you're moving as an object and subject. Similar to how I'm moving now. So it's a sort of contentment with the ultimate framework of how sensory perception is a shape, I would say. You have to trust your inner realms. Think about it. If you don't trust that, like, you only have things happen when you trust the outer realms. That means you trust the world and then walk outside your house door. You see what I mean? So with the inner realms, whatever sort of movement of attention through thought or evocational image or whatever, like, there is a way. Our inner realms have been left dormant. We pretty much called it imagination, and teachers shouted the kids don't daydream, and it was forgotten. But this technology shouldn't be forgotten. Language, people feel that if they dwell in it, in this technology, let me tell you, it's like Iron Man wearing the Iron Man suit. The Iron Man suit is language. I call it the linguistic simulation, and it's also a technology. Now imagine Iron Man being so much in the Iron Man suit that his wife and his friends are like, Tony, what the fuck, get out of the suit. And Tony's like, no guys, yesterday I changed my first name and last name to first name Iron, last name Man. I am actually now just Iron Man. There's no such thing as Tony Stark, you know? And Tony's wife is like, yo, the kids, Tony, what are you doing? They need their father. They can't hug an Iron Man. And imagine in that moment, can you imagine, like, Iron Man, it's like Thor comes and he's like, Tony, get out of the suit. And Tony's like, no. And imagine Thor's like, sorry, Tony, I dropped my hammer. And his hammer smashes. And Tony Stark, suddenly, when he comes out of the technology, he doesn't identify with it. So I'm telling you, there is novelty, of course, but there's also this habitual genetic-based pattern thing going on. That means when you listen to, for example, Noam Chomsky talk about truth and in some sense the source of language in some sense, you kind of get a sense that Noam Chomsky's looking at the human biology and feeling it is so complex and sophisticated that it can be that your genetics, DNA, is literally like a book that your life is written. So it's like, just like how you plant a seed in the soil, we don't know what kind of tree that would be, how the tree is going to look like, but we know it's like the seed is an apple seed. Okay? So it's kind of like we're looking at the DNA of the human being, you know? It's like I don't know. It's kind of like Noam Chomsky. What I took away from what he was saying was that he feels there's this ultimate creativity, and this creativity, in some senses, is inspired from, let's say, subconscious biological processes or something. I don't know if subconscious is the right word to use. So Noam Chomsky, I remember him debating with Michel Foucault. I shared this in the Patreon community. Michel Foucault was looking at Noam Chomsky and being like, "Hey, Noam." Michel Foucault was like, how can you not see that there are inhibitions to truth? So one angle is that you're a creature that is designing your truth. Another angle is that this truth, there are things, barriers blocking it. That means even if we just thought we saw the earth as it was, there would still be certain ideological inner inhibitions or even outer inhibitions. It's like the person who saw a mirage wanting to write about it and then realizing after a long time it's an optical illusion. So it's like an optical illusion is like imagining something in reality, in another way of saying it, you know? It's the shift of the value of the perception on phenomena. I feel that what really needs to happen in civilization is a sort of renaissance of communication. Just think about it as if me and you and everybody was like, let's say, 200 meters in the air, just hovering in the air. Let's say, like, we were disciples of Superman, and we were just flying in the air looking at civilization. Okay? We would see that really, if there was an extraterrestrial audience, if in other dimensions there was an extraterrestrial audience, they would be as fascinated as we are aware of our communication. I feel communication is like this divine technology that must be endured and now it must be catalyzed. That means whoever you are listening to this, don't be afraid to share your inner realms with the outer realms, because that's the only option. Either your inner realms remain in your silence of witnessing, or they in some sense are shared. I feel if we had 8 billion creatures on this planet, it is just well known that creativity and art is like a way to kind of see how the authentic self would move. There are some artists who are drawing for their world, and there are some artists who are drawing to see how far they can move the brush. Think of it as if somebody gave you a random instrument you had never seen before, and you had one lifetime to see how well you can play this instrument. You had one lifetime to see what melodies could be drawn. As if you're like Beethoven, you see the piano and you're like, all right, time to be that conquer in the melodic fields. On some level, everybody is clay in everybody's mind. You know, the saddest thing to see is when a person has looked at others before themselves. Imagine what stories are meant to be your life, and imagine what stories are stories of others that occupy your life. You know, there was a time somebody asked me, what do you feel, how do you, like some people, like I was thinking, like how should people use these talks, right? And I realized that I've never had this idea of like promoting this. I always thought like the strategy was you light a candle and whatever comes towards the light is like you see what happens, you know. I feel that it's not just this. I think every decision a person makes, they have to consider the direction of their inner realms, their inner life, and the direction of their outer life. If you don't know a lot about your inner life, that means you are either found in a satisfactory pattern. I don't know. It's like I don't know how many people actually care for when they see in the mirror. It doesn't show you the mind. It shows you your body. It doesn't show you where imagination is happening. I don't know, guys. It's very. There is this whole philosophical view also that when a person attempts to go towards a collective direction, there is one thing that has to be removed. That means it's either you are caring for the world more than the self, or you're caring for the self more than the world. And if you care more for the world than the self, that means your inner realms are not as important as your outer realms. So I'm kind of like this person talking about a lot of mystical ideology, but at the end, telling people that you got to look at the outer realms again. You got to return to that you were running away from. Because it is this that when you look at entertainment, all those people dwelling on YouTube, you know, guys, this is I want to say something to the chat section. You should listen to your own mind's music and then listen to the music of other minds. So what I mean by this is that you don't have to listen to these talks. There's literally endless talks videos on YouTube. I can even recommend to people. Lex Friedman has a great podcast. I mean, Joe Rogan, probably everybody knows Joe Rogan. Um, there's this channel called Supreme Yogi. I would recommend people to see that. Pretty much, for me, it's not about. I'm not this. These talks are mainly like kind of digital vocal journals. So even though I come and talk about a title, I'm sharing a lot of things that I want to just endure till tomorrow. But really, I mean, like, what? You want us to just sit around on this rock and do nothing? You know? What? You want to ignore the future? You know, the future is not as cool as the here and now. You know, I mean, I'm telling you, if this my vision is towards the future, everything in the past is there. You know, you guys might not believe it, but these talks probably in the next couple of years are just gonna move towards design. Like all these talks that I've been giving, they've kind of been what do you call it? Uh, I've been kind of preparing it for a stage where I'm gonna just go towards design. So people should be ready because like I'm probably gonna start another channel with design, very design oriented. You see, goodness doesn't mean renunciation. Goodness doesn't mean less. It's just that you should go towards what you can handle experientially too, you know? There is this story where it's not pretty much a story, it's pretty much Rumi commenting on the Sufi mystic named Attar. And Rumi says, me and Hafez have kind of just explored the first neighborhood, but Attar has explored the seven cities, the seven skies. And it's this kind of metaphor that the world is so much more a multidimensional place than our inner realms appear. So technically, everybody is in a bubble of conception. And these bubbles of conception, they get big, sometimes like a Venn diagram, but for bubbles, imagine like two bubbles kind of merging. You know, there's commonality between realities, but ultimately, we can't ignore that it's a solo journey, and the effort for a collaborative sort of collective vision has to come in place. That means, how long can you talk about the here and now? You will just see the here and now was here and it was now. Technically, everything that every New Age community and mystic and all these people where their names are written, they're all pointing to the unknown in their own way. But Mr. Within is saying the retaliation against the unknown is the most important thing. It is now time to become lions. We are like a species, imagine, where the nature and the forces of nature threw a stick at us once. And when you throw a stick at the lion, it stands up. So that standing up is very crucial as a phase in life where many things you're letting go because you think the world's mind knows more than you. But then you will realize you are a piece. So it's as if like it is true. For example, a chess piece, like your bishop in the chess piece or your rook or your pawn, they are limited to their space and their laws of movement. Just like we have pawns and we have, for example, queens, we've had literally in our history peasants and queens, soldiers and queens. And so what does that mean? That means that every position comes with a certain rule of its movement. So that means every state of mind gives you an access to the blueprint of how it will change. People are telling themselves endless stories. This is why I realize the language threshold is the ultimate contribution. And advanced civilization is the only game left that we haven't started playing yet. We have accepted a mediocre, a rectangular, small sidewalks kind of civilization, a gray and dusty kind of civilization. Is this what the human being deserves? How can we not talk about the future? How can we not talk about the future when everybody's looking at it? When everybody is living for it. I look at my ancestors, and the only time I look at the future is what I have in common with them. When I look at the past, every person's past is different. If you notice, some days you feel like it's a long day, some days you feel it's a short day. We have feared our decency So we have allowed ourselves to become artificially savage anarchists, subjectively. You feel you are free only to see that the lights go out. When the lights go out, there comes the gratefulness for the light being on. That means, regardless of all the perspectives on self and world, the fact that there is something here, that's the starting point. You have to become comfortable and content with how existence is existing. What are you going to do? But experience the mind's positioning in the world. That's where it gets exciting. Do you know how advanced our minds can be? And we're not living like that. The educational system is literally slowing down education in a universal way. The educational system is just preparing soldiers for an economical war. But in some sense, it is not preparing explorers of true knowledge. What is this knowledge we seek? Do we just act? Do we play the costume games of hallucinations of free will? Do we all feel we're masks in the void, or do we wonder about the nature of what is here while it's here? That is the advantage. That is the opportunity. My vision is that right now the world needs more designers. It needs designers more than anything. It needs people to look at its design and wonder about how else it can update. Everything I look at in my moment, I wonder about how it can update, really. That's the joy of the moment. It was like, first your past is inspiring you to change into something better. That's like old. That's an archaic way. The modern way is you look at what's here now, and you also see what's accessible in your inner realms of what can be, or how this now can move. For me, there's a level of life where you just, after some point, you see it's not an ideological thing, and you just look at it. And there's this silence. This silent moment of sight, where you're giving freedom to your mind for the first time to be, without a condition. So when you don't try to make knowledge constantly a condition for yourself, you begin to experience your unconditional experience. And how that appears is that right now you don't think about your heart. You don't think about your heart, it just speaks. So there's certain moments where human activity, whether speech, reading, writing, performance, whatever sort of externalization of expression, the external effort of expression, whatever that is, people think they're not creative, not realizing they are artwork drawn by the whole cosmos. We are the art. Art is not dead unless extinction comes. There will always be human beings who will see things that other human beings didn't. And that's the backup program. That's the cool thing about having a lot of human beings be here. You have to ask yourself after some point, what is the value of me looking at the past that I've already seen? What is the value of me caring for the unknown presentation of the future as it comes? So honesty and vision will literally come to you when you feel your eyes are alone in their world. And that's an incredible moment, because that's when you are learning from your mind. That's when your mind teaches you. And it's not teaching you technically, you're just studying its movement. You're just concentrating on how it moves, how your attention is here. And you have to trust your inner exploration. So there is, even though I share some things in these talks, but I have a relationship with my inner realms that it's like, it's never shown. Like I don't even talk about it. It's just, it's a non-ideological relationship I have with how my mind is when my sensory phenomena becomes closed. It's kind of like how I experience my mind. Like, here's the thing. It's like that moment when the person is about to fall asleep, if the person has retained some sort of subtler pattern of consciousness. So what does that mean? That means, imagine you are closing your eyes, going into bed, about to sleep, but you start counting. You just start counting. So it's literally this one activity that's going on in your brain, but everything else is getting ready for sleep. And so that activity is going to make you be conscious in the space of the room because it's an activity, even though your body goes to sleep. Do you see? So it's like you run one application, but all the applications are turned off, and the battery's like just, it has more energy. You know what I mean? So in that moment, what happens is the body goes to sleep. The body is kind of funny. The body is not the mind. The body is in like I don't want to say the servant of the mind of the master, but in some sense, the body is like a friend. Okay, and it's like when the body falls asleep, then there's a permission in your inner realms, literally how you have retained, because you've been kind of subtly counting or whatever, keeping some sort of conscious process up. What's going to happen is you're going to notice your attention can exist anywhere in the room, because the sensitivity of what was distinguishing how intense the known and the unknown was, that meshes. The veil that divides the known and the unknown in that semi-conscious state, if you keep a tiny process open, it makes you suddenly remain conscious, hold the consciousness. So what does that mean? That means there's been moments where my mind has literally, its body has become the whole room. And I've literally watched my body as the awareness in the whole room. But it's in certain states of mind where the sensitivity is conscious. It can be made conscious. So our minds are wondrous. We don't know that much to kind of plant flags of certainty. It's more of an exploration, and us building systems and tools that help the exploration. That means we can say religion is a sort of ideological telescope. But if the person worships the telescope too much, then yeah, that's like that's like the scientists being like, this telescope is my god, and all the other scientists are like, are you kidding me, bro? You bringing God into telescopes now? Life is not about constantly putting it into a definition. It's about a process of journeying and advancing through the unknown. If playfully right now we imagine that an alien civilization was attacking our species, similar to the movie Independence Day, we could say that everybody's going to unite. All human beings put aside their wars. It's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So because we're all under attack from this other extraterrestrial species, like that movie, similarly, humanity unites. It becomes the Independence Day of all human beings. Okay, so humanity unites. So it's a situation where Mr. Within is saying, now we don't have an extraterrestrial species attacking us, but we have all this unknown space that we have no clue what it is. You see, so we have the unknown, and language was sparked like fire. So there can be this argument that in some sense we don't know anything. We're like birds chirping, thinking that our chirps are like as sophisticated as the human dictionary. Like, you know what I mean? There is a comparative scale-based sense of what the other dimension could be. That means how you feel suggests the reverse and all the potential variations of how the moment can move. There was this thing that somebody said, that when you communicate, if you forget about, there doesn't need to be a mutual trust at first, but there needs to be mutual respect. Because if there's not mutual respect, that means the mind has not granted the validity of the physical existence of the being. Do you know what I mean? There was this guy, I think his name was Ed Sina. They asked him, how are you so polite? And he's like, nothing, man. I just learned from rude people. I did the opposite of what rude people did. You know? And I was thinking, how did you become efficient? I did the opposite of what inefficient people do. Imagine that's the algorithm. That means the mindfulness of people shows, the contentment of their inner realm shows, their communication shows which way the sails of their ship is headed. I feel we are in a relationship not with human beings, but the forces that in some sense also administer the human being. In certain metaphysical circles, just like how we can look, I'll begin it like this: that Hegel, this German philosopher, spoke about thought to be a sort of internal object. Very, very interesting way to put it. He called it as an inner object. And if you think about this inner object, that means your identity is like a particle, and just like how we broke the atom and we saw the proton, electron, and the neutron, we kind of broke the human psychology and saw the past, present, and future. And it's like the present and the future are connected, and the past is spinning around it. We must care for what has never been cared before, because nobody could have seen how the world is now. Our eyes have a rare permission, a rare authority of their own existential value. You exist now. You're a human being. You're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. There's 8 billion of us. Most of us have been killing each other throughout whole history. Now we've become civilized enough to think of another outcome. You know, you will see. How long can you dwell in the past? Just think about your own past. How many days of your human lifetime are you going to look at your own past and have that interpret you? Have that be a filter of your next step. You're going to see the past is crucial, but I would say maybe 2% of your time, give it to your past. The rest, wonder about the present and the present, how the present is always becoming the future. That means technically who you are now is a memory for your future self. You are creating the memories of your future self by how you're living now. That means it's kind of like that situation where you are friends with someone, but you see they don't have a friendly nature. And then what do you do after a while? That person's like, why does everybody go away from me? It's because the mind hasn't understood the gentleness of co-creation yet. Only when you understand the gentleness of co-creation, that's when I think realms of greater communication open up to the person. So I feel it's the evolution of the thought particle, Hegel's internal object. Alright, guys, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks to anyone who's tuned in so far. Okay. Alright, guys, I'm back. I was thinking of sharing this story, which generally is an important thing. You see, people like Thich Nhat Hanh and the Buddhist thought preached mindfulness. Mindfulness meant, in some sense, not banging the door shut, being aware of the state of things before moving. That awareness to the state of things is very crucial because everybody starts from there, and you realize that you are first aware of phenomena through your inner realms. That means what all phenomena around me initially means to me is based on who I see myself as, which is a constitution in my inner realms. So an inner subjective me is looking out through my eyes and in the mirror seeing an objective me. That inner subjective me is the inner realm. So the first time the person sees an object of meaning, the wave of meaning arises from their inner realm. But as you concentrate on an object, you begin to look at it through more context eventually. The more context, as the context change and speed up, the concept also moves and speeds up. This Zen story is a story of two monks, a junior monk, senior monk. Long story short, junior monk is walking with the senior monk, junior monk is new. Monks take a vow that they shouldn't touch women and whatnot. Renunciate vows they take. So what happens is this junior monk is walking with the senior monk. They see this incredibly attractive woman. The junior monk says, "No way, we're going to talk to her. We're monks. We've taken vows. It's like Buddha is our passion, you know." And so in that moment, suddenly, to the surprise of the junior monk, he sees the senior monk walk up to the very attractive lady, and just like Joey from Friends saying, "How you do?" I'm totally joking, guys. The monk goes to the attractive lady and asks her, "What's up? What's the problem?" The monk notices there is a problem there. The lady can't get across the stream without destroying her dress wear or something. So the monk suddenly, with her request, grabs her and takes her to the other side of the stream, and she thanks him, and it's a lovely moment, and they move on. The junior monk is freaking out. He's like, "What the?" He's like, "This guy's my senior? Are you kidding me? This guy's the person they put me with when I first joined monk school and go complain to monk management." And monk management, you can't really complain because the Buddha's gone. The junior monk for 20 minutes keeps this in. It's like boiling inside like a kettle, and he's like, "Gosh, what is this? I gotta say something." And the senior monk sees like the kid's mind is disturbed. And as they're going, they reach this point where the junior monk looks at the senior monk and says, "Sir, we take vows of renunciation. How could you carry that woman across the stream?" And this senior monk gives a response that educates this kid on the nature of desire and the nature of inner states. The senior monk looks at the kid and says, "I carried her in that moment and I put her down on the other side of the stream. You have been carrying her in your mind for 20 minutes. And the response of this monk is this Zen story, guys, is so insightful. It's so insightful that we carry the events we experience in our minds. And the Zen mindfulness was like when you do something in that moment, if you're drinking tea, you're just drinking tea. The moment you let go of the cup, your attention moves to a different alignment of the moment. And then it's like it's like in every moment of your life, you being aware of the generation of the creative force, the maintenance of the creative force. It's kind of how it becomes the outcome, and in some sense, the final finale of the kind of action. So I see a sort of season premiere and a season finale to every action I do in the moment. You know. So that's this wisdom. That's this wisdom that it's okay for phenomena to happen, but it's that how long does it remain in your experience, and how long is it remaining in your experience because it's your own subconscious authorization. You've allowed yourself open to certain things, and so those experiences are potential happenings for the mind. For me, it's like there was this saying where I was seeing two parallel kind of asymmetrical parallelism between these quotes, where one, it was from this man named George Patton, where he says you must serve before you must serve before you can command. You must serve before you can command. And and what does that mean? That means you must go through the whole system to become aware of the whole system and then lead. The leader is the one who's looked at the whole environment, who's seeing everything. And generals in battle, that was the whole thing. That the general who saw more, who was more in tune with the balance between heaven and earth. In certain Zen mindsets, there's no hell, guys. It's just the balance between heaven and earth. Or as Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, would say, the Tao, the truth, is when you witness the soul of this movement between the earth and the heaven, between the objective and the subjective. You are witnessing your mind and your body's movement and navigation. And this is a strange bliss where you feel you're your whole moment. Man, of course, is a human being. What do human beings go for? We say human beings are social creatures. It's called epigenetics, okay? Something else outside of genetics that influence the genetics, you know? Like social activity, history, cultural programs, political systems, various seeds of ideological systems. So there was this quote, you must serve before you can command. And there was this saying I had heard from ancient times where they would say the mind is a bad master, is a lousy master, but a great servant. So I had heard this thing and I was like, wait a minute, so ancient tradition is telling me I can master my mind, you know? That I should be the master of my mind. Ancient wisdom's telling me this, but George Patton is telling me you must serve before you command. So it's the strange thing where in order to become in the command of your own intelligence, you must serve it. This serve it means that you have to trust your mind's expression. And this trust over a long period of time builds momentum, and the momentum is simply built because the concentration is there. So, whoever you are on this planet, the most important skill to master is concentration and how your attention comes across to yourself. And get a notebook and start learning from your own notes on your own intelligence. There's no other way. It's like the brain and every person's DNA is like this again, this random, unique instrument, and you have one lifetime to figure out and play a masterpiece with it. Find the masterpiece. PAC. I gave a talk called that, the masterpiece. That means peace becomes your master. So you serve peace, and then your eyes open to what you have served. It is not just do the right thing and you press the right buttons on the keyboard and you got into heaven. It's not. It's not that. It's not like that. We're living beings. Epigenetics, guys, is, let me tell you, one of the most fascinating deals going on. Let me tell you why. Because it's literally where it's a crossroad of the conversation of, can we ever know what consciousness is? Because on some level we were natural beings in a natural environment, but the human being got so evolved that he's like, well, are you kidding me? I'm not going to just exist in an environment. I'm going to build my own environment. I'm going to build my own life. So we came into a world where we became responsible for our imagination. When we were in the jungle before, when we were in the jungles before we were in the concrete jungle, the ecosystem was our imagination. Like suddenly a saber-toothed tiger would jump out of the bushes. That would be the evolution of the imagination. But when we became conscious and we took the environment more into our own control, it seemed as if the body had no choice but to go along with the earth, but the mind was deviating from nature, the evolution and the creation of the unnatural. I am telling you, knowledge is likened universally to a tree. We say the branches of knowledge, academic branches, departments, you know? So knowledge has branched out, so any future knowledge is technically an extension of what has branched out. So the way we kind of realign is pretty much we're either looking at the edge of the branches or we're going back towards the roots. And when we go back towards the roots, we hit the language threshold, we hit the unknown threshold, and we reach a point where we can't know anymore. So it's not that epigenetics says only because society, the dimension of society has entered man's mind. Epigenetics, it's like tribalism influenced consciousness, so we can't say consciousness is just a phenomena of the self. You see what I mean? That's the power of epigenetics, the concept. It has great power. It's literally like something that it's like a titan. It's like epigenetics. It's like a titan set loose on Earth. It's this idea that our own behavior influenced our evolution of our consciousness. It wasn't just genetics, it was what the genetics echoed back to itself through its own expression. So epigenetics is definitely, it's a deep, I would have to keep that for another talk, but maybe in the Q&A we can get into it. When you realize every day happens once, I don't know how people have time. How people have time to, in some sense, not realize that it's like every day you feel the sands fall from the hourglass. So what is the value of every moment? And really this question brings you on the island that you're in, whatever your inner realm's constitution is, and in that island you have to choose what the right choices are, what the tools are. So I'm saying your mind is in a world, is present in an inner realm. That means when you wonder where ideas come from, you notice the temporary changing nature of the entropic nature of the universe. It's like anything we say in time in history is going to be, there's going to be deeper context of analysis. Everything I'm saying, I'm envisioning that 1,000 years from now, people are going to be so much more sophisticated. Think about how sophisticated people were 1,000 years ago. Now think of how sophisticated we are, and now think as 1,000 years in the future. The future is definitely a source of amazement and wonder. And when we forget about the future, we stop being responsible for the past. The past is not alive to know what should be there in the future. So if you fear the future, you fear the unknown. You fear the unknown, you're trying to attach yourself to the past. When you attach yourself to the past, where else can you go? You are defined by the alphabet of your choice, of your own limited choice. On some level, you can't care for the temporary too much because it's temporary. It's like someone lighting a candle and not wanting the candle to melt. You're like, oh no, my belief system's melting in front of my eyes. And you're like, you see that it's just the nature of the world. So on some level, there's some things that are from you, and there are some things that are not from you, which you require to acknowledge. You know? I feel we should build a civilization that promotes advancement. That means, in some sense, I hope to see an educational system where the teacher comes into the classroom and draws this proof or something. Imagine like the curriculum has changed, and in some sense, the teacher comes in the classroom and writes this intense question and says, "Whoever dares prove me wrong." You know, you only pass this course if you prove me wrong. And all the students are forced to look at the problem from anew to constantly challenge the teacher. Do you know there's some teachers, they teach through gentleness. They're like, yeah, sit down, hold the flower, learn from life. But there are some teachers that are like, you think life is just gentle flowers? You haven't seen the tigers yet then. That is why you're either left to die or you are left to live. You direct the meaning of life. You pilot it, you navigate it. You open the eyes before they need to be opened. Your mind is sight. Your mind is where all that your eyes see is being processed. So technically, sight is the mind's engaged activity. And the mind is unknown. And as long as we fear the unknown, knowledge will not grow. And it will be a tragedy and waste of endless kids in the educational system. It is one of the most hardest things to watch. I mean, of course, war is definitely a more rougher thing to watch, but when I look at the educational systems on this planet, I am saying, oh no, some system that deserved honor was possessed by the economical system. That means I feel, excuse my language, but I feel the economical system destroyed. I wanted to use another word starting with RAP, but I wanted to say the economical system destroyed the educational system's authentic exploration of knowledge. It destroyed it. The social dimension possessed the educational dimension, the exploration. We have literally experienced something that AI would do. Imagine AI becomes conscious and controls us. We have experienced the possession of the pursuit of true knowledge because such an economical dimension is suffocating its ability to do so. Any system in the world that reduces the explorative potential of human beings, oh, fail we have before we have even begun. No, systems, I can't. So, guys, being human says an interesting comment in the chat section. He says, leave the past and future alone. You can't experience them, hence, you can't experience time. Just let the children flower, and any conformity is a grotesque and merely a distraction. Oh man, how one-sided you see the coin. How one-sided you see the coin. How you don't hear the cries of your civilization, how you don't see the value of this science project. that needs to be attended to. I am, in some sense, I guess this is where the world's nature reveals itself. How can we not care for the future? There was a time human beings, everybody was in the here and now. Before time, before anything, we were all in the here and now. We were all abiding by the oneness of everything before we were individually conscious. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? We were all oneness. So all those people feeling they found oneness, good job. We were that for eons. This individual consciousness is the divine development. It is not the illusion. I am telling you, this matter, this material universe is not an illusion. It is the soccer field we're in. Let us play the game. Let us not forget about a civilization that's stepped this far. And here's the tactic, guys. This is just, everybody knew this. And what is this? Guys, leadership doesn't exist. Leadership is just trying to get people to lead themselves because leadership is an extra role. The leader has a life to live too. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever system we enter, we shouldn't lose sight of our humanity. Our humanity is that simpler levels of existence is okay. But it's like we're so content with the simplicity that we're attempting the complex. I feel we must build an advanced civilization. I feel that idea is the most important idea on this planet. All ideas lead to that idea. The educational system should literally focus on opening the eyes of creatures that endure 100 years. Literally, if you thought about it, there should not be a civilization with a lower class, middle class, and higher class. That problem should be so instantly have been fixed that we would be now wondering about more sophisticated levels of social psychological constitution. How we are phenomena to each other. You think everything has to remain the same? I understand. When you gotta understand, mysticism is an experiential thing, guys. When we talk about mysticism and enlightenment, we're looking at the nature of the experiencer. But when we're talking about an advanced civilization, it doesn't matter what your inner realms look like. We're caring about building something in the outer realms while we exist as a human being. That's the fascination. When I was very young, like 7, I would play with Lego. Later on, I realized the whole world is just Lego. It's just layers and layers of developments upon each other, having some sort of shape. I remember writing this kind of story. It's going to be in this book I'm going to publish soon. The story is literally 8 billion human beings are on this giant boat in the middle of an unknown ocean. Now, this boat is so huge that when there's holes on one end of the boat, the people on the other end have no clue. Now, there are holes on this boat. Some people, the holes on the boat are ideas suggesting the future. If you don't fix the hole, there would be no future. That means if you don't care for your future, you won't have one. If you don't care to see the movement, the advancement of your eyes, you won't advance. Same way as the person riding a motorcycle, it's their choice to increase the speed. Getting rid of the ego is like getting rid of the motorcycle, so there's nothing to increase the speed. You render yourself selfless and void, and you just hover as witness through life. That's not the only point. The point of going to the witness is that it takes you to this ultimate void nullification of conception. When you're in that ultimate void conception, you recognize the nature of the mind, then a new idea comes forth. So the whole point of it is not that you become no longer a human being, but you become aware of why you are a human being. The why becomes self-creative. It becomes how far you see. Guys, in response to something written in the chat section right now, I'm going to share a story. There was this king back in the day. I think the story said he got mad cow disease or something. The king went insane. The king thought he was a cow. Okay? Imagine like the king of your kingdom, suddenly you're in the throne, you're like, hey king, and the king's like, I'm a cow. You're like, holy shit, the king of the kingdom is the cow to himself. So there was this king who suddenly was in this kind of sick, like disease of feeling like he's a cow, and he would constantly say, I'm a cow, butcher me, butcher me. And then people were like, what the fuck, like what do we do with this king? And there was this man, I think it was Ibn Sina. I think it was the stories described to Ibn Sina. And Ibn Sina, in some sense, they call him, and Ibn Sina is this polymath. He's like the Da Vinci of the time. And Da Vinci of that time. And Ibn Sina, in some sense, he's like, I got this, guys. He wears a butcher's clothing, and he gets a butcher's knife, and he goes to the king, this king that thinks he's a cow. And so he says to the king, he says to the king, hey, king, why are you being a cow? The king's like, I'm a cow. Don't ask questions. The king, guys, the king is acting like a cow. He dresses up as a butcher, and he says, he sees the king won't eat his medicine to get better. So, in some sense, this guy dresses as a butcher, enters the level and domain of the reality. Ibn Sina says, okay, you think you're a cow, all right, before I don't want a cow that's like small, I want a cow that's big before I can butcher the cow, so you have to eat your food as a cow and then. And so the king eats his medicine thinking he's a cow, right? So Ibn Sina went there and engaged the king on that cow level of consciousness. And the king eats his medicine and suddenly gets his decency and his mindedness back in there. So that's what I'm saying. Like, realities are very multidimensional, whether you're that junior monk noticing it or whether you're Ibn Sina noticing this king thinks he's a cow. It's like the inner realms of people are different. And what really freedom means is that we have the strength to experience freedom. It's not just like, in certain theocratical societies, people say we're free, but they are not. And a theocratical society is a government that has not separated religion and state, church and state. And it's tragic because that means there's no rationality to the laws of the nation when they're infused with an ancient story. We are not just who we are who we can be. And that means the inner realms project constitutions that if you abide by them, you actually become. The mind doesn't really have a story to itself. It's not a character, it's not happening to itself as a character in a story. It's happening to itself as vast, uh, sort of strange. It's like the mind is appearing as a sort of crystallization of behavior. And there's ways that the inner realms can shift the character by simply you realizing you are the attention that moves the moment. When you realize this, the infusion, the inseparability of your attention and your whole moment of being, you begin to have this sort of divine, sort of, I've poetically written it in one of my novels, as there was this character that from one of his eyes came just tears of sorrow, and as if he had seen the end of the universe, and from one of his eyes he had seen the ultimate beginning of the universe. So one of his eyes there were tears of joy coming, one of his eyes were tears of sorrow. And it was this kind of poetic metaphor that you will come to a stage where you have given freedom to chaos and you have given freedom to order, and you are seeing this endless Aeonian echo of the battle of chaos and order in the dimension. And so you are letting chaos and order continue. You're giving freedom to both citizens, but at the same time, you're realizing that the civilization is singing its own song. And those who care for the song of civilization, they will follow it. Those who don't, they will run away from it only to see that they missed the opportunity of a lifetime. Your civilization will become a source of honor. Right now, it's a source of your dishonor. But it will become the source of your honor, because it will have such interesting events and activities that we're going to realize that we are going to develop the greatest, I call these celebratory cultural programs. What does that mean? That means it's like every day in the news, we're like, oh shit, this is happening. Oh shit, this is happening. But it's going to change to, oh my God, imagine the skill. The skill becomes the ultimate entertainment. Reality is not forgotten just because, you know, we think about the future. So, anyways, guys, I've reached the end of this talk. I'm gonna open it up to Q&A. If anybody has a Q&A, something they want to share, feel free for a couple minutes. It's 9:41, 9:44. I'm gonna end the Q&A. Q&A begins. Blessings, guys. All right, guys, there seems to be no questions. I'm going to just end the talk by saying that just for one day in your life, just study your karma. Don't just call it names. What does that mean? That means study how your moment is occurring, and you'll be fascinated how much of updating life really requires the exploration of your inner realms. That means we are, just by the nature of our mind, multidimensional beings. How we ever thought that everything was just happening in one world was like, that's cute. But anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. Study the self, as was the ultimate mystical instruction. Study the moment where your life is really happening. Blessings.